Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Speaking Nerds channel. We are so excited to have you here with us today. I'm your host, Maya.
And I'm John. This is where we explore real English, the kind that helps you sound natural, connect with people easily, and join everyday conversations with confidence. Not textbook phrases, but the actual language that real people use in their daily lives.
Exactly right. And if you're serious about improving your English and learning how native speakers really talk in normal situations, please show your support right now by hitting that like button and subscribing to English Speaking Nerds. Your support means the world to us and helps us create more helpful content like this.
It truly does help us so much. And today we're talking about something you'll use constantly in English conversations, discussing weekend plans. This might sound simple, but there's actually a lot of natural vocabulary, common phrases, and cultural understanding involved.
Talking about weekend plans. Now, this is one of those conversations that happens all the time, at work on Friday, with friends during the week, with family members, even with people you've just met. Understanding how to talk about weekend plans naturally helps you connect with English speakers and join casual conversations with ease.
It's everywhere, because asking about weekend plans and sharing your own is one of the most common ways people make small talk, show interest in each other, and build relationships. When someone asks, "Any plans for the weekend?" you need to know how to respond naturally and keep the conversation flowing.
And please stay with us until the end because we are going to cover how to ask about weekend plans naturally, how to describe your plans in different ways, how to talk about having no plans, how to show enthusiasm or lack of enthusiasm, and how to turn these simple questions into real conversations. This is going to be incredibly useful.
So let's dive right in. Maya, why is talking about weekend plans such a big part of English conversation?
Oh, that's such a perfect question to start with. Talking about weekend plans is more than just exchanging information. It's actually a social ritual, a way of connecting with people, showing you care about them, and finding common ground.
Yes, and this is what I call the weekend conversation ritual.
The weekend conversation ritual. I love that. Explain what you mean.
The weekend conversation ritual is this pattern of asking about and sharing weekend plans that happens every single week in English-speaking cultures. Usually starting on Thursday, but especially on Friday, people ask each other about the weekend. It's not just curiosity, it's a way of being friendly, showing interest, and creating connection. Then, on Monday, people ask, "How was your weekend?" to continue that connection. It's a predictable, comfortable pattern that helps people relate to each other.
That's so true, and there's actually a specific timing to these conversations. We call it the weekend anticipation window.
The weekend anticipation window. Tell everyone about that.
The weekend anticipation window is that period from Thursday afternoon through Friday when people start thinking about and talking about the weekend. The closer you get to Friday afternoon, the more these conversations happen. People's energy shifts, their focus changes, and weekend plans become the main topic. By Friday afternoon, almost everyone is talking about what they're doing when they leave work or school.
Exactly. And understanding this timing helps you know when to bring up weekend plans naturally. You wouldn't ask someone about their weekend plans on Tuesday morning, but Thursday afternoon? Perfect timing.
Right, and there's something else important here. Not everyone has exciting plans, and that's completely normal. We call this the weekend plan spectrum.
The weekend plan spectrum. What does that mean?
The weekend plan spectrum means understanding that weekend plans exist on a range from absolutely nothing to extremely busy, and everywhere in between is totally acceptable. Some people have elaborate plans, trips, parties, events. Some people have simple plans, errands, relaxing at home. Some people have no plans at all. All of these are valid, and native speakers talk about all types of plans without judgment.
That's such an important point because learners sometimes feel pressure to have exciting plans to talk about. But in reality, saying nothing special or just relaxing is perfectly normal and common.
Exactly, which brings us to what I call weekend plan expectations.
Weekend plan expectations. Define that for us.
Weekend plan expectations are the cultural understanding that weekends are for whatever you need them to be. Some people use weekends to be social and active. Others use them to rest and recharge. Some people run errands and do chores. Others see it as adventure time. There's no right way to spend a weekend, and native speakers understand this. So when someone asks about your plans, they're not judging. They're just making conversation and showing interest.
Perfect. And that takes the pressure off. You don't need impressive plans. You just need to be honest and natural.
Right, so let's start with the most basic question. How do native speakers ask about weekend plans? What are the most common ways to ask?
Great starting point. The most common question is simply, any plans for the weekend? This is casual, friendly, and used constantly. You'll hear this everywhere on Thursdays and Fridays.
What are some other ways to ask?
You might hear, what are you doing this weekend? Got any plans? Doing anything fun this weekend? Any big plans? What's your weekend looking like? Up to anything this weekend? Or simply plans?
These all feel slightly different, right? Some are more casual than others.
Yes, plans by itself is very casual, usually between friends or coworkers who know each other well. What are you doing this weekend is more complete and can be used with anyone. Doing anything fun this weekend assumes you might have entertaining plans. They're all friendly, but some are more informal than others.
What about the tone when asking? Does that matter?
Tone is important. These questions should sound light, friendly, and genuinely interested, not like an interrogation, but like you actually care about the person's answer. A warm, upbeat tone makes the question feel like friendly conversation, not an obligation.
Now, let's talk about how to answer. What if you have definite plans? How do you share them?
When you have clear plans, you can be straightforward. You might say, I'm going to visit my sister. We're having friends over for dinner. I'm going hiking. We're going to the movies. Or I have a birthday party to go to.
These are simple and direct. What about adding enthusiasm?
You can show enthusiasm by adding words like, actually, I'm really excited I'm going to, or I'm looking forward to, or I get to, instead of just I'm going to. For example, actually, I'm really excited I'm going to the beach this weekend, or I get to see my best friend, she's visiting from out of town.
That get to phrase is interesting. Why use that?
Get to shows that you feel lucky or happy about the opportunity. It's more enthusiastic than just I'm going to see a concert. Compare I'm seeing a concert with I get to see a concert I've been wanting to see. The second one shows excitement.
What if your plans are more casual or ordinary? How do you talk about normal weekend activities?
This is what I call everyday plan language. You might say, just the usual, catching up on errands, nothing too exciting, probably just cleaning the house, just a quiet weekend at home, maybe some shopping, nothing major, or just taking it easy.
And that just word appears a lot. Why is that?
Just in this context means only or simply, and it makes your plans sound casual and low-key. Just relaxing means you're only relaxing, nothing big. It sets the expectation that your plans are simple, which is perfectly fine.
What if you literally have no plans at all? How do you say that naturally?
There are many natural ways to say you have no plans. You can say, no plans yet, nothing planned, not sure yet, probably nothing, no solid plans, playing it by ear, or keeping it open.
What does playing it by ear mean?
Playing it by ear means you're not making definite plans. You're going to decide what to do as the weekend happens, based on how you feel. It's spontaneous and flexible. You might say, I'm just playing it by ear. Maybe I'll do something, maybe I'll just relax.
What about keeping it open?
Keeping it open means not committing to plans so you stay flexible. Maybe you're waiting to see what comes up, or you just want the freedom to decide later. I'm keeping my weekend open means you're not scheduling anything definite.
Is it okay to have no plans? Some people feel awkward admitting this.
It's completely okay. Many people have no plans, and it's nothing to be embarrassed about. In fact, some people are proud of having no plans because it means they can rest. You might even say, no plans, and I'm so happy about it. Or, finally, a weekend with nothing scheduled.
So you can actually express relief about having no plans?
Absolutely. You might say, "Thank goodness I have nothing planned. I need to recharge." Or, "Looking forward to a weekend of doing absolutely nothing." Or, "No plans is the best plan." This shows that empty weekends can be just as valuable as busy ones.
That's refreshing. Now, what about when your plans are tentative or uncertain? How do you express that?
Great question. You can use words like maybe, probably, might, or thinking about. For example, I might go to the gym. Probably just staying home. Maybe catching a movie. Thinking about visiting my parents. Or we might go out, not sure yet.
These words show uncertainty without sounding indecisive?
Exactly. They show you're flexible and haven't committed yet. It's very natural to have tentative weekend plans. You're not being wishy-washy, you're just being honest that nothing is set in stone.
What if you have too many things to do? How do you talk about busy weekends?
When you're busy, you might say, "I've got so much to do. Pretty packed weekend. Gonna be busy. Have a lot on my plate. Running around all weekend." Or back-to-back plans.
Do you sound stressed or excited when saying these things?
It depends on your tone and how you feel about it. If you're stressed, you might say, "Oh, I've got so much to do. I wish I could just relax." If you're excited, you might say, "Packed weekend, but it's all fun stuff." Your tone tells the story.
What about when you have work or chores to do? How do you talk about unexciting but necessary weekend activities?
You can be honest about this. You might say, "I've got some chores to catch up on. Need to do some yard work. Have to clean the house. Catching up on laundry. Grocery shopping and errands." Or just adulting, which means doing responsible adult tasks.
Adulting is such a funny term. Can you explain that?
Adulting is a casual, somewhat humorous way of referring to doing adult responsibilities, like paying bills, cleaning, grocery shopping, and other necessary but not exciting tasks. Young adults especially use this term. Just adulting this weekend means you're doing boring grown-up stuff.
I love that. What about when weekend plans change? How do you talk about that?
Plans change all the time. You might say, "Actually, my plans changed. That fell through. We had to cancel. Change of plans. Ended up doing something different." Or, "It didn't work out."
What does fell through mean?
Fell through means plans that were made didn't happen. They collapsed or failed to materialize. Our trip fell through means the trip you planned isn't happening anymore. It's a very common phrase.
How do you respond when someone tells you about their weekend plans? What do you say to keep the conversation going?
This is crucial for natural conversation flow. You want to show interest and ask follow-up questions. If someone says they're going hiking, you might say, "Oh, nice, where are you going?" Or, "That sounds fun, do you hike often?" Or, "Great weather for it." Or, "Who are you going with?"
So you're responding with enthusiasm and curiosity.
Exactly. Even simple responses like "nice," "sounds fun," "awesome," or "that should be good" show you're listening and interested. Then you can ask a related question to continue the conversation.
What if someone's plans don't sound fun to you? Do you fake enthusiasm?
You don't need to fake it, but you should be polite and positive. If someone says they're doing yard work all weekend, you don't have to say, "That sounds amazing." You can say something like, "Well, it'll be good to get it done, right?" Or, "At least the weather's nice for it." Or simply, "Good luck with that."
What about when someone has no plans, like you? How do you respond?
You can relate to them. You might say, "Same here, just a chill weekend." Or, "Yeah, me neither, looking forward to some downtime." Or, "Nothing wrong with that." Or, "Sometimes that's the best kind of weekend." This creates connection through shared experience.
Now let's talk about the follow-up conversation on Monday. How do people ask about how your weekend was?
The most common Monday question is, "How was your weekend?" You'll hear this everywhere on Monday mornings. At work, at school, at the coffee shop. It's standard Monday conversation.
What are other ways to ask this?
You might hear, "Did you have a good weekend?" "What did you do this weekend?" "How did your weekend go?" "Did you do anything fun?" Or, "Good weekend?"
How do you answer these Monday questions?
You can give simple, positive responses like, Good, thanks. How was yours? Pretty relaxing. It was nice. Really good. I needed that. Went by too fast. Or, it was great.
What if your weekend wasn't great? You can be honest without being overly negative. You might say, it was okay, pretty quiet, needed to be more relaxing, too busy, or didn't do much. Then you usually turn the question back. How was yours?
What about sharing details? How much do you say? This depends on your relationship with the person and how much time you have. With acquaintances or coworkers you don't know well, keep it brief. Good, spend time with family. How about you? With friends, you can share more detail. Really good, we went to this new restaurant downtown and it was amazing. Have you been there?
So you gauge the depth based on the relationship?
Exactly. Read the social cues. If someone asks while walking past you in the hallway, they want a quick answer. If you're sitting down for coffee with a friend, you can share more detail.
What if you did something really exciting? How do you share that without bragging?
You can share excitement naturally by focusing on the experience rather than showing off. Instead of, I went to an exclusive event you couldn't get into, say, I went to this amazing concert. The band was incredible. Focus on why it was fun, not on making others jealous.
What if someone asks specifically what you did and you did nothing? Be honest and light about it. Honestly, just relaxed at home. It was perfect. Caught up on sleep mostly. Just a quiet one. Or nothing exciting, but that's what I needed. You're not apologizing, you're just stating facts.
Now let's talk about work culture. In many workplaces, asking about weekend plans on Friday is almost mandatory small talk. Why is that? Friday afternoon has this special energy. Everyone's looking forward to the weekend, people are in good moods, work is winding down. Asking about weekend plans is a way to connect with coworkers, show you see them as people beyond work, and participate in the collective anticipation of time off.
So even if you're not close with someone, you might ask them about their weekend?
Absolutely. It's friendly office behavior. You might ask a coworker you barely know, any weekend plans? While getting coffee. It's polite, social, and expected. You're not being nosy, you're just being friendly.
How do you keep these workplace conversations brief but warm?
You acknowledge their answer with interest, maybe ask one follow-up question, then wish them well. For example, oh, visiting family. That's nice. Well, have a great weekend. Or, just relaxing. Perfect plan. Enjoy. Then you exit the conversation naturally.
What about with your boss? Do you ask them about their weekend plans?
Yes, it's perfectly fine to ask your boss about weekend plans, as long as you keep it professional and friendly. Any weekend plans is appropriate. They'll usually give a brief answer, and you respond politely. It shows respect and friendliness without being too personal.
What if you're new at a workplace? Should you engage in weekend conversations?
Definitely. This is actually a great way to integrate into a new workplace. When Friday comes, if someone asks you about your plans, answer warmly and ask them back. It helps you make connections and shows you're friendly and open.
Now let's talk about cultural differences. Not everyone has weekends off. How do you handle that?
Good point. Some people work weekends. If someone says, I'm working this weekend, you can respond with empathy. Oh, that's tough. Hope it goes quickly. Or, well, maybe you'll have days off during the week. Don't assume everyone has Saturday and Sunday free.
What about different cultures that might have different days off?
Be aware and respectful. If you know someone observes different days as their weekend, adjust your question, any plans for your days off, instead of specifically saying weekend. Or simply ask, when's your next day off? This shows cultural awareness.
Let's talk about phrases that native speakers use constantly in weekend conversations. What are the essential ones?
One big one is sleeping in, which means staying in bed later than usual in the morning. I'm planning to sleep in, or finally get to sleep in. This is a very common weekend plan.
What else?
Catching up, which means doing things you haven't had time for. Catching up on sleep, catching up with friends, catching up on shows, or catching up on housework. It implies you're behind and using the weekend to get current.
More phrases.
Taking it easy means relaxing and not doing much. Just taking it easy this weekend. Also, laying low, which means staying home and keeping a low profile. Just laying low. Both express the same idea of quiet, restful weekends.
What about expressions for fun weekends?
Living it up means having a really fun, maybe exciting time. Gonna live it up this weekend. Also, making the most of it, which means fully enjoying your time. Only 2 days, so making the most of it.
What about when the weekend is over?
People say back to reality or back to the grind on Monday, meaning returning to normal work life. Well, back to reality or the grind starts again. Also, weekend flew by, which means it passed too quickly.
These are such useful expressions. Now let's talk about invitations. Often when discussing weekend plans, people invite each other to join them. How does that work?
If you're sharing your plans and want to include someone, you can say, "We're going to the park, want to come?" Or, "I'm checking out this new cafe, you should come with me." Or, "A group of us are getting together, you're welcome to join."
These are casual invitations.
Very casual. You're not formally inviting them to an event, you're just offering to include them in your plans. They can easily say yes or no.
How do you accept these casual invitations?
You can say, "That sounds fun, I'd love to." Or, "Yeah, count me in." Or, "Sure, I'm free." Or, "That sounds great, what time?" Keep it light and enthusiastic.
How do you decline without being rude?
You can politely decline, "That sounds fun, but I've got other plans." Or, "I wish I could, but I'm busy." Or, "Thanks for thinking of me, but I can't this time." Or, "Maybe next time?" You're appreciating the offer while declining.
What if you're not sure and need to think about it?
Say, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." Or, "I might be able to, can I let you know?" Or, "Possibly, I'll text you later." This keeps the door open without committing immediately.
Now, let's talk about people who don't like being asked about weekend plans. Some people find it intrusive or repetitive. How do they handle it?
Some people do find the constant weekend plans questions tiresome, especially at work. They can give brief, polite answers that don't invite further conversation. Nothing much, or the usual, without elaborating. This politely closes the topic.
That makes sense. You're not being rude, just not opening up a big conversation.
Exactly. You're fulfilling the social obligation without diving deep. Most people will pick up on this and move on.
What about different age groups? Do teenagers, adults, and elderly people talk about weekends differently?
Great observation. Teenagers might say, hanging out with friends, or just chillin', going to a party, or sleeping all weekend. Their language is more casual and focused on social activities.
What about working adults?
Working adults often mention errands and responsibilities, like catching up on housework, taking the kids to soccer, date night with my partner, or finally some me time. Their weekends often balance fun with responsibilities.
And elderly people.
They might mention spending time with grandchildren, church on Sunday, garden work, visiting friends, or simply a quiet weekend at home. Their plans often reflect different priorities and energy levels.
All valid ways to spend time. Let's talk about weather in weekend conversations. Does weather come up often?
Constantly. Weather often affects weekend plans. People say, "Hope the weather holds," or "If it doesn't rain, we're going to," or "Perfect weather for," or "Too cold to go out," so weather's part of the weekend conversation.
How do you incorporate weather naturally?
When sharing plans, mention weather if relevant. Going to the beach if it's sunny, or hiking weather looks perfect, or since it's supposed to rain, probably just staying in. When responding to others, you might say, "Great weather for that," or "Hope it clears up for you."
Now let's talk about recovery. Some people use weekends to recover from busy weeks. How do they express this?
Recovery language includes need to recharge, or going to decompress, or just need some downtime, or recovering from this week, or taking time to relax.
These phrases show the weekend is about restoration.
Is it normal to feel tired going into the weekend?
Completely normal. Many people say, "I'm exhausted, looking forward to doing nothing," or "This week wore me out," or "So ready for the weekend." It's honest and relatable.
What about people who feel sad when weekends end? How do they express that?
Sunday evening sadness is real. People say, "Don't want Monday to come," "Weekend went too fast," "Already dreading tomorrow," or "Wish I had one more day." Some people even call it Sunday scaries, the anxiety about the week starting.
That's such a common feeling. How do you respond to someone expressing this?
With empathy and solidarity. "I know, right? Same here. Always happens too fast." Or, "Well, at least it's a short week, if there's a holiday coming." You're commiserating together.
Let me ask you both a personal question. John, what are your typical weekend plans like?
Oh, I love this question. Honestly, my weekends vary so much. Some weekends I'm super social, meeting friends, trying new restaurants, going to events. Other weekends I'm completely hermit mode, staying home, reading, maybe cooking something nice, just recharging. I've learned that both types of weekends are necessary for me. I need the social connection, but I also deeply need the quiet time. When people ask me about my weekend plans on Friday, my answer completely depends on what I feel I need at that moment. Sometimes I say, "Going to be busy," and sometimes I say, "Not leaving the couch," and both answers feel equally good. What about you, Maya?
I'm pretty similar. I used to feel like I had to have exciting plans every weekend. Like if I stayed home, I was wasting my time or being boring. But now I realize that my best weekends are actually the ones where I do whatever I feel like doing without pressure. Sometimes that's an adventure, sometimes that's just coffee and a book. I love Saturday mornings especially, that feeling of having 2 whole days ahead with no obligations, pure freedom. And I don't judge my weekends anymore by how much I did or how exciting they were. If I feel good on Monday, it was a good weekend, regardless of what actually happened.
That's such a healthy perspective. And I think that's what we really want people to understand. Talking about weekend plans isn't about impressing anyone or having the best plans. It's just about connecting, sharing, and being honest about how you're spending your time.
Exactly. Whether you're climbing a mountain or sitting on your couch, you can talk about it with confidence and authenticity. You don't need to apologize for your choices or feel less than anyone else.
And when you ask others about their plans, you're not judging them or comparing, you're just showing interest and making conversation.
Right. It's one of those beautiful, simple ways humans connect. We share how we spend our time, and that tells others about who we are and what matters to us.
So we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments, what are your weekend plans? Or if you're watching this on a Monday, how was your weekend? Use some of the phrases we discussed today. Practice the language in a safe, friendly space.
And if you found this helpful and feel more confident talking about weekend plans in English, please give us a big thumbs up. It helps other learners find this content too.
And please share this video with someone who's learning English, especially someone who struggles with casual conversation and small talk. This might be exactly what they need to feel more natural in everyday interactions.
Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell icon so you know when our next episode is released. We're going to keep exploring the real English conversations that happen in everyday life.
Until next time, stay nerdy, stay curious, and remember that every conversation is an opportunity to connect, learn, and grow.
See you next time.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Enjoy your plans or your lack of plans. Bye.